Here's something that keeps me up at night. We're building machines that can diagnose cancer, drive cars, approve loans, and soon make battlefield decisions. We're teaching Silicon to think, but here's the question almost no one is asking. What philosophy are we programming into these systems? Because right now we're winging it. And we've got ethics committees, guidelines, frameworks with names like responsible AI and trustworthy systems. But scratch the surface and you'll find inconsistency, corporate compromise, and a whole lot of vague language that means everything and nothing. Meanwhile, capabilities are doubling every few months. We're in a technological arms race where the prize is superintelligence, and the cost of failure might be everything. But what if I told you that there's a 2,000-year-old operating system we've been overlooking? A philosophical framework so robust, so tested by time and catastrophe, that it might be exactly what we need to build machines that we can trust. I'm talking about Stoicism. Now, before you click away thinking this is some productivity hack or self-help nonsense, stay with me. Because when Marcus Aurelius wrote about control, virtue, and accepting what we cannot change, he wasn't writing a journal.
The fate of the Republic is written not in blood, but in law.
He was developing an ethical system for navigating a world that he couldn't fully predict or control. Does that sound familiar? This video isn't about applying ancient wisdom to your morning routine. It's about whether the most sophisticated technology that humanity has ever created should be built on principles that have guided rational minds through plague, war, political collapse, and existential uncertainty. We're about to find out if Marcus Aurelius might be the most relevant philosopher of the AI age. Let's begin. The foundational insight of Stoicism is deceptively simple. Epictetus, a former slave turned philosopher, opens his Enchiridion with these words: "Some things are within our power, while others are not." That's it. That's the dichotomy of control. But don't mistake simplicity for weakness. This distinction is everything. Things within our power are our judgments, our intentions, your responses, our values. Things that are outside our power are other people's opinions, the weather, the past, your own mortality. But here's the key: the behavior of complex systems that we didn't design. Now, apply this to artificial intelligence. AI researchers call it the alignment problem. How do we ensure that AI systems do what we actually want them to do, not just what we tell them? It's the difference between instruction and intention, or between codes or consequence. Current approaches try to solve this through reward functions, safety constraints, and extensive testing. But here's where Stoic philosophy offers something radical. Accept that you will never have complete control over the system's behavior in every possible scenario. It's not defeatism, it's realism, and it fundamentally changes how we should design AI. If we know that we can't control everything and artificial intelligence does, especially as these systems become more complex, more autonomous, more capable of learning beyond their initial parameters, then our ethical responsibility shifts, doesn't it? We can't guarantee the outcomes, but we can guarantee the principles embedded into the system's architecture. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." For AI developers, this translates to, you have power over the values you encode, not every possible output. Encode wisely, and the system will find ethical strength. Think about autonomous vehicles. We obsess over trolley problems. Should the car save passengers or pedestrians? But that's seeking perfect control over an uncontrollable scenario. The Stoic approach asks something different. What virtues should guide the vehicle's decision? Well, what principles should be non-negotiable? This is where the Stoic virtues become design principles. The four cardinal virtues: wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. They're not abstract ideals. They're operational frameworks, and here's what makes them uniquely suited to AI. They're relational. They exist in tension with each other, requiring constant balancing. just like real-world ethical decisions. Wisdom without courage is useless philosophy. Justice without any sort of temperance is just tyranny. Courage without wisdom is just recklessness. These virtues check each other, creating a dynamic ethical system rather than a rigid rulebook. But imagine an AI trained not just on data, but on virtue-based objectives. Not maximizing this metric or that metric, but seeking the wise course of action. Not to optimize efficiency, but to balance justice with practical constraint. This is already happening in early-stage research. AI ethicists are developing what they call virtue ethics for machine systems that learn to exhibit traits like fairness, honesty, and doing good, not as programmed rules, but as emergent properties of their training. But here's the critical insight from Stoicism that modern frameworks miss. Virtue isn't about outcomes. It's about orientation. A Stoic doesn't guarantee that they will succeed. They only guarantee that they will approach the problem rationally, justly, courageously, and with moderation. The outcome isn't fully in their control, but their character is. For AI, this means designing systems that are virtuous in their reasoning process, not just their results. Because in a complex, unpredictable world, we can't foresee every scenario. But we can build machines that approach the unforeseen circumstances with the right principles. Epictetus taught his students, make the best of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens. For AI developers, this becomes, build the best ethical architecture you can and deploy it with humility, monitoring, and willingness to adapt. The Stoic framework doesn't promise perfect AI. It promises accountable AI. Systems built on transparent principles designed with explicit values and operated with the humility to know we're dealing with the forces that are beyond our control. And that might be the most honest approach to AI ethics we've got. But there's a problem. And it's the same problem that's plagued every attempt to create ethical AI systems so far. How do you teach a machine to perceive the world correctly? Because before virtue can guide action, judgment has to interpret the reality. And if the machine's perception is flawed, if it sees patterns that aren't there or misses the ones that are there, then all the virtuous reasoning in the world won't save it from causing harm. This is where Stoicism really gets interesting. Marcus Aurelius wrote something that should be printed on every machine learning textbook. Everything we hear is an opinion, not a fact. Everything we see is a perspective, not the truth. Think about what he's really saying. Raw sensory input isn't reality, it's interpreted reality. Your brain doesn't passively receive the world. It actively constructs it through layers of assumption, prior experience, and cognitive shortcuts. Does that sound familiar? That's literally how neural networks function. Every AI system processes information through layers of learned patterns, what we call training data. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Those patterns aren't objective reality. They're historical reality, frozen prejudices, embedded biases, and anything else. Amazon's hiring algorithm discriminated against women because it learned from historical hiring data, which reflected historical discrimination. Facial recognition systems show higher error rates for darker skin tones because they were trained predominantly on lighter skinned faces. Risk assessment algorithms in criminal justice perpetuate racial disparities because they learn from arrest records, which themselves are reflecting biased policing. These aren't software bugs. They are perception problems. The machines are doing exactly what they were designed to do, to find patterns in data. The problem is that the data reflects a world that is itself unjust, incomplete, and distorted by human limitation and proclivity for violence. The Stoics had a technical term for this: appearance or impression. Before you can respond virtuously to a situation, you must first form an accurate impression of what that situation actually is. And here's the key. The Stoics insisted that we have a duty to examine our impressions before accepting them as truth. Epictetus taught, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. For AI, this becomes first, ensure your training data represents what the world should reflect, not just what it historically has reflected. Then you design it accordingly. This is why AI fairness researchers now talk about interventionist approaches, actively correcting for bias in training data rather than passively accepting it. It's why there's growing emphasis on diverse development teams, because homogeneous groups literally can't see certain forms of distortion. Quick pause. If you're noticing small mistakes in how I'm speaking, those are real. I left them in on purpose. I'm brand new at this. I recently walked away from a long-term career and decided to build something honest here for YouTube. I'm learning in public. I'm not here to present a perfect version of myself. I'm here to think clearly, speak plainly, and improve over time. That's why I cut as little as possible, because you guys deserve the real version, not a polished mask. If this way of thinking resonates with you, consider subscribing. I'll keep showing up, refining the ideas, and doing the work out loud. Alright, let's get back to it. But here's where the Stoic framework gets deeper than current AI ethics. Modern bias mitigation treats fairness as a technical problem to solve. Adjust the weight, balance the data set, tune the parameters. Stoicism treats it as an ongoing practice, a discipline of perception. Marcus Aurelius kept returning to this theme. The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. For AI systems, this means the model becomes shaped by the nature of its training, not just the data, but the values embedded in how that data was selected, weighed, and interpreted. There's a concept in Stoicism called disciplined attention, constant vigilance over your own mental process. The Stoics believe that most human error comes not from malice, but from inattention, from accepting appearances without examination, from letting judgment happen automatically. AI researchers are beginning to understand this. They call it model explainability, the ability to understand why an AI made a particular decision. But current explainability methods are mostly after the fact. We examine the decision after it's made. The Stoic approach is more preventative. It asks, what practices of attention, what habits of examination, what discipline of perception must be built into the system's architecture so that it naturally questions its own conclusions? This is already emerging in what researchers call adversarial training, where AI systems are deliberately exposed to the edge cases, optical illusions, and contradictory data to learn not to overtrust their initial impressions. It's teaching the machine what to do. Epictetus demanded of his students, pause before judgment. But there's a deeper layer still. Stoicism recognizes that perfect perception is impossible. We're always working with incomplete information through the filter of our own limitations. The goal isn't omniscience, it's appropriate confidence, knowing when you know, knowing what you know, and knowing when you don't. For AI, this translates to uncertainty. Uncertainty measurement systems that can say, I don't know, or I'm not confident in this prediction. We're finally building AI that can express doubt, that can recognize the limits of its own perception. And here's the thing. A machine that thinks it sees clearly but doesn't is dangerous. A machine that knows it might be wrong, that's the beginning of wisdom. And wisdom is the first of the Stoic virtues, not coincidentally either. So, we've established that Stoicism offers both a framework for control, knowing what we can and can't determine, and a discipline of perception, ensuring that our interpretations are as accurate as possible. But there's still a fundamental question we haven't addressed. Can machines actually be virtuous? Or are we just building really sophisticated optimization engines and calling it ethics? Here's what we need to be brutally honest with ourselves. When Stoics talked about virtue, they weren't talking about following the rules. They were talking about developing a character, a stable disposition to choose well, even under pressure, even when no one's watching, even when the right choice costs you something. Can an AI have that? Well, can silicone develop character? I'm not sure. The knee-jerk answer is, of course not. Machines don't have consciousness, at least not yet. They don't experience moral struggle. They don't face genuine choice in any meaningful sense. They execute code. End of story. But let's think more carefully about this. What the Stoics really cared about wasn't the internal experience of virtue. It was the expression of virtue in action. They cared about reliable ethical behavior and systems, human or otherwise, that could be trusted to choose wisely when it mattered. And on that measure, AI might be more capable than we think. Consider courage. For humans, courage means acting rightly despite your fear. But the Stoics had a more subtle definition. Courage is the knowledge of what genuinely deserves fear and what doesn't. It's the wisdom to distinguish real threats from imagined ones, and the resolve to face real threats, even when you're afraid. An AI system designed with this principle wouldn't just be programmed to take risks or play it safe. It would be trained to correctly assess which risks serve justice and which ones serve recklessness. An autonomous medical AI with Stoic courage doesn't avoid difficult cases. It takes them on when its capabilities are genuinely suited to help, and it defers them when they're not. That's not just code execution, that's principled decision-making. Or take justice, which the Stoics defined as giving each person their due. Not equality of outcome, not utilitarian greatest good, but proportional response, based on genuine understanding of context. Current AI fairness metrics are crude: demographic parity, equal opportunity, predictive equality. They're blunt instruments trying to capture a nuanced concept. The Stoic framework says justice requires wisdom to understand the situation, courage to make the difficult fair choice, and temperance to avoid both excessive leniency and excessive harshness. It requires virtues in concert, checking each other. This is why some researchers are now building multi-objective AI systems, not optimizing for a single goal, but balancing multiple values simultaneously. A loan approval AI guided by Stoic principles wouldn't just maximize profit or minimize default risk. It would balance financial prudence with fair access, institutional sustainability with individual opportunity. These tensions are not equations, and managing tension is what virtue does. Temperance, moderation, and self-control might be the most urgently needed virtue for AI right now, because the default mode of machine learning is excess. More data, more parameters, more compute, more optimization, more, and more. But the Stoic sage knows when enough is enough. He knows when unchecked growth becomes cancer. He knows that power without restraint is tyranny. And an AI system with encoded temperance doesn't just pursue its objective to the absolute maximum. It recognizes proportionality, context, and the principle of good enough. It doesn't recommend content endlessly to maximize engagement. It recognizes when saturation serves nobody. It doesn't optimize every micro decision. It preserves space for human autonomy. This is the vision. AI systems that don't execute tasks, but embody principles. Not perfectly. The Stoics never claimed perfection, but reliably, consistently oriented towards wisdom, justice, courage, and moderation. Is this even possible? Well, we're beginning to find out. Research into constitutional AI systems trained on explicit principles sets shows that language models can learn to exhibit value-aligned reasoning, not as rigid rules, but as flexible guidelines. They can explain their reasoning in terms of principles, not just probability. They're learning to think ethically, not just output ethically. And here's the profound implication. If we can build machines with something resembling virtue, then we have a moral obligation to do so, don't you think? Because once we know it's possible, negligence becomes culpability. The Stoics believe that humans have a natural affinity for virtue. We're built to recognize it, to aspire to it. We're building artificial minds now. We get to decide what they're built to aspire to. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." For AI developers, that becomes, waste no more time debating what ethical AI could look like. Build them. So, what does this actually look like in practice? How do we translate a 2,000-year-old philosophy into contemporary AI development? 3 concrete principles. First, design for virtue, not just safety. Current AI safety research focuses on preventing harm, building guardrails, red teaming for failures, constraining capabilities. That's necessary. But it's defensive. Stoic ethics asks, what positive principles should guide this system's behavior? Before we train a model, we should explicitly define the virtues that should exhibit. Write them down, make them part of the system documentation. Then architect your training, your reward functions, your evaluation metrics around demonstrating those virtues, not just avoiding their absence. Second is practice disciplined attention. We should build in structural skepticism. Don't just test our models for accuracy, test them for overconfidence. Create adversarial examples specifically designed to reveal when the system is making judgments without accurate foundation. Implement uncertainty measurements as a default, not an afterthought. Every prediction should come with a confidence range. Every recommendation should acknowledge what information might change it. And critically, diverse teams, not as a nice to have, but as a necessity. Teams with the same backgrounds have the same blind spots. You need multiple perspectives to catch the impressions that shouldn't be trusted. Third, accept the dichotomy and plan for the loss of control. We need to build AI systems assuming they'll eventually do something that we don't predict or want them to do, because they will. Design your development strategies with that assumption. Graduated rollout, kill switches, monitoring systems, feedback loops, mechanisms for correction. The Stoic doesn't rage when things don't go as planned. They plan for things not to go as planned. This means abandoning the fantasy of perfect control and embracing the responsibility of principled guidance. You can't guarantee your AI will never cause harm, but you can guarantee that it was built with the right values, deployed with appropriate humility, and monitored with genuine accountability. That's the Stoic compact. I can't control outcomes, but I can control my principles. I can't prevent all failure, but I can ensure that I fail while trying to do the right thing. For AI, that means building systems where, when something goes wrong, and something will go wrong, we can point to the virtues that we tried to encode, the attention that we tried to practice, and the humility that we tried to maintain. It means building AI that we can be honest about. If you're an AI developer, researcher, or policymaker, you now have a framework that's been stress tested across centuries. Use it. Make virtue explicit in your work. If you're somebody who uses AI systems, like myself, or like many creators out there, which is basically everyone, you now have a language to demand better. Don't just ask, is this AI safe to use? Ask, what virtues does this system embody? What principles guide its decisions? And if you're just trying to navigate a world increasingly shaped by artificial intelligence, the Stoic framework offers something invaluable: agency. You may not control what AI becomes, but you do control how you respond to it. You control the standards that you demand. You control whether you engage critically or passively accept whatever comes your way. Marcus Aurelius led Rome during a plague and a war. Epictetus taught philosophy as a slave. They didn't have control over their circumstances, but they had absolute control over their principles. We're building the future with artificial minds. The question isn't whether we can control them perfectly. The question is whether we'll build them with virtue. The Stoics would tell us that much, at the very least, is within our power.